Audre Lorde taught me that introducing ourselves matters. Naming yourself, saying who you are, making clear your values, cares, concerns, and commitments matters. Each time you write or you speak, you are putting yourself into a world that is shared. That was Sarah Ahmed in Audre Lorde's Your Silence Will Not Protect You. And I am Andrea Jensen, and welcome to Taidekirppis Live. I hope that you are comfortable. I hope that you are okay. I hope that you have a nice cup of tea or beer or a glass of wine with you. That will probably help you get through this with me. I'm going to be talking about my research, my big D, the uncanny soul of a place and a being, a cartographic encyclopedia on curating communities and contemporary art. And I want to thank you, Taidekirppis, for inviting me to do this. I think that speaking in public or speaking out live is always a good way to make things more clear for yourself and somehow find out what you are doing, why you are doing it, and with who. And usually I really enjoy it because of the energy you get from being in the same space with other beings. And as we can't do that now, I'm substituting you there with my plants. So they are the living beings giving me the energy now that you can't be here. And in a way, plants are the perfect audience, because even if they would be like super judgmental and disapproving on what I'm going to say, I wouldn't understand that. So, when I'm talking about my research, I'm probably going to all the time be using us or we instead of I, even if I am doing the research, because my practice mostly happens in collectives and with other people. And I strongly think that we actually never work alone. I'm going to get to that later on. I'm also aware that the we is not a simple concept, and it's always a way of drawing borders. So when someone is included, someone is excluded. So it's also always about positioning yourself and recognizing where you stand. I want to thank Kone Foundation for supporting my work. I think that is the most relevant thing at the moment, because I have been working on my dissertation for a long time, but only now that I have been fully able to concentrate on it, it has started to develop. I was struggling with the form for a long time, as my background is both in fine arts and in theory. I was studying aesthetics in the University of Helsinki before going to Aalto University to do my MA in visual culture. That was in Pori that time, and it was about art theory, site-specific and socially engaged practices. So that really helped me to combine both the theory and the practice part. And I think that in my artistic practice, this combining has been a success, because the Pori School, as we call it now, and Aalto University, it didn't only teach us how to do things, but it also brought the same-minded people together. And we were able to continue to work together after that. So our projects are often based on artistic research, and also they start with a research question and then take forms that are artistically and visually interesting in different forms and different locations. And this way of practicing is also why communities and collectives have become so essential part in my practice and my research. It has not only created the platform where I work with people, but also created the understanding of art as a platform for creating encounters, and where we meet people, and that is how we find out things about life. And that is also how we create these places to together try to approach things that maybe you couldn't in the traditionally understood ways of research or science. So I want to thank Porin kulttuurisäätö, the collective that we have been doing exhibitions and events in Pori since 2013, and especially Anni Venäläinen and Eliisa Suvanto for all the work that we have done together, all the support they have given, and all those amazing conversations we have had during the years, and also all the artists that we have been working with. With Eliisa, we have also done the Space Invaders project since 2013, and it's a project that every time happens in a different location, often locations that are only partly used or empty, and they are short-term events that bring different knowledges, different practices together. And Andrea Coyotzi Borja, who is my partner in How to Life project. And How to Life is a project where we lower our expectations below average to be able to deal with failure, which of course is inevitable when you're working with things like non-knowledge, infraordinary, and uncanny. So How to Life happens somewhere in between the controlled and the structured every day, and what then comes and disturbs it and kind of escapes the ordering and structuring. And these things often also escape naming. They remain hidden. So studying them is a bit like trying to feel out something in the dark, or trying to take paths that you don't know where they are leading. And this often happens that you kind of feel something that you don't yet know what it is. So intuition is a thing that tends to lead us to places. And to have courage to go towards these strange paths requires trust, which I think that has become one of the main concepts in how I see art today. And working intuitively has also brought me here today, both with the plants and with my dissertation. I have been living with both of them for a long time, and still I sometimes feel that I don't really know so much about them. Even if I don't know them thoroughly, I find them relevant, I find them important and meaningful and dear. They can also be uncanny, like especially the plants, but also in my research, I think that what is in the surface and what you think that they are aren't the whole truth. And when you start digging deeper, you find things that you maybe didn't expect to find, or you were not willing to imagine that they would have. And both the plans and my dissertation, they need time and they need care. And still you don't know what's going to happen with them, if they are going to flourish or if they are going to die. I guess time will tell. But back to my dissertation and how the grant and being able to put time into this has helped me to solve the form. And also, when I have been thinking about the form of the dissertation, it has helped me to realize that what is it what I or we do, and how does it happen. So in the practice, how theory and practice have been combined, it has been easy, but in my big D, not so much. There is this kind of joke saying that in theory there is no gap between practice and theory. In practice there is, and that's pretty true. So for a long time I was working with the dissertation so that it had two parts. The first part was the theory part that I have already researched in or studied in my two master theses, both in Helsinki University and in Aalto University, about the uncanny, about the non-verbal phenomena in the world, about the undead. That is for me, as I see it, the perfect example of the disturbing, because in the world where everything is all the time in a flux and in a flow, and then you have two concepts, life and death, that are considered to be stable. So the most horrifying thing we can't imagine is the undead that is escaping those two things. And still the uncanny is something that I find relevant in my research, but that might not be so visible in my practice, in the project that we are doing. But then I also realized that in a way it's of course like that, because the uncanny, or originally as Heidegger and Freud used it, unheimlich, is the home light that has become strange, or the secret that was supposed to stay hidden but that came to daylight. So of course it can't be like a clear visual part of the project that we are doing. And then the second part of my dissertation was about my practice, about the place, when the first part was about the soul. And that included reflections and descriptions of the project that we have done during the years. And then the results, even though I'm a bit hesitant to use the word results, as I think that it kind of implies to this neoliberal way of wanting the research to have results already before you start. And also it kind of implies for the results to be fixed, which of course is impossible in the world where everything is all the time in a flow and changing. So every decade, every year, every moment, every culture, every place, the results are going to be interpreted differently. You can't really have fixed, stable results. But anyway, the results were supposed to happen in a dialogue. But then, however hard I tried, the dialogue didn't really happen between these two parts that were completely different from each other, like with the way of approaching the questions and the style of writing. And after a while, I started to think about it as a project of different things coming together. As also my practice happens in different places, in different forms. I have multiple professional identities, even if they are all combined. I'm an artist, a curator, researcher. I study different things. I'm involved in politics. I'm a feminist. I'm many different things in different contexts. And all these bits and pieces are what make my practice. So instead of these two wholes, I started to think about the fragments and also about the multiplicity and about not being able to control it all and not being the author genius behind everything. Every time, or at least very often, when I teach, when I give presentations, when I write, I always try to emphasize how thinking and doing never happens alone. We always think and work and do in a network of other thinkers, writers, artists, concepts, and ideas. Our practice, at least my practice, is a resume of different things, practical and theoretical. And even if the whole Cartesian dualism thing has taught us that the mind is more important than the body, this is not true. Knowledge and art are about experiences, and experiences have spatial embodied dimensions. All these dimensions and practices that together constitute my theory and my practice that are actually the same. So I started collecting a map from these different things and aspects. And the map then is based on my main thesis, which is that art is a collectively and communally meaningful practice that creates and mediates knowledge. And this understanding of knowledge goes beyond the traditional verbal concept of knowledge. And therefore, art also has a lot of potential. It has possibilities, but also responsibilities. And saying this means that to some degree I am questioning the traditional understanding and idea of art's autonomy. I definitely do think that to some degree art needs its independence. We need to be able to question the structures and how society functions, and we need to be able to think about things that might seem strange and weird and not yet understandable. But as always, with freedom comes responsibility. And it's not like these things haven't been discussed before, but now that also when we have been creating the projects and when I have been doing this research, a new generation of artists has emerged that actually take this responsibility more seriously. And it's a diverse group with multiplicity of voices. A group that is questioning the old white male hegemony and the myth of the creative lonely genius, whose power, according to the myth, has often been more destructive than constructive. And this is still something that is maybe not like so much emphasized, but often expected, that you need to tolerate certain kind of being and acting because someone is an artist, and that they are a good artist means that they should be able to behave and do things that offend people. And it's not okay. So I'm really proud of all these people who are offended and who publicly say things out loud and question these ways of practices. And this questioning opens both to ecological and ethical directions. How do we justify what we do? And do we understand the causes that our practice has? And do we care? And how do we care? For a long time, art has, maybe most of all among the artists, considered as something that is essentially and ontologically good. And this has led into a situation where nature, globe, environment, and other beings, human animals and animals, have been exploited. And us, the autonomic and independent art, should be able to discuss these things and make things that are hidden visible. It's not okay to use others' suffering for someone else's career. It's not a tool that you can use to do something. And sometimes the lines are blurred, and it's not easy to say, like, if you want to make something more visible, or if you are using it as a material. So, and this project of self-reflection, admitting mistakes, and giving up old habits, trying to reconsider your practice, it's not easy. It's exhausting, and we need support, and we need new approaches. So my dissertation is a way of respecting all these people who have been working with questions, and also a way of trying to map these things. It's a mapping project where I try to collect and mediate concepts and themes and practices in a way that would seem relevant today. It's a cartographic encyclopedia, meaning that it is an encyclopedia that tries not to pretend that it covers everything or that it would be all-knowing. But it tries to pinpoint things and create routes and paths for others who might be thinking about the same things. And as an encyclopedia, you can go there and choose what kind of themes you want to read about. So often dissertation is something that you need to read from the beginning to the end. And of course, I'm very pleased if someone wants to do this with my dissertation. But I also understand that not everyone is willing to do that. So I want to give an alternative opportunity for those who are interested, not in everything, but in some of the things that I might be writing about. So, as questioning the form of encyclopedia, it's also a project of deconstruction. It's deconstructing the canon, encyclopedia itself, research, language, the history of art, and theory. Encyclopedia is like a monument or even a monolith, celebrating the work of enlightenment and rationalism, control, order, structured society, which means a productive society that tries to exclude everything that is unwanted or disturbing. So it's also a project of making things visible, or has been a project of making some things invisible. And in a way, this is a natural continuation to what we have been doing. As completely new things are usually impossible to recognize. We don't even see the things that are completely new because we don't know them and we don't understand them. So we have in our project often taken something that is immediately recognizable and known and already familiar as a starting point, and almost as a joke, but a serious one, then started reconsidering the concept, the ideologies behind it, and what it has caused. From biannual to World Expo, we have been exploring themes from ethics to ecologies, from funding to precariousness, from public to private, from global to local, which, by the way, I think that is one of the most important themes of our time. If from the 60s, I think Michel Foucault has often been credited for the thought of space being the most important theme of our time, I think that it has now turned into the question of global and local, which especially now during the pandemic, it's quite interesting how the global art world that has already during the recent years been interested in local, how are we going to go on from this? So I think that in a way, doing my dissertation as an encyclopedia is almost like an inevitable way to then gather the project and the research together. And also I find that creating an own encyclopedia is a way to pay respect, but also continue the work that has been done by Julie Kristeva, Lucy Regarey, Helen Sixou, Audre Lorde, Bell Hooks, Donna Haraway, Sarah Ahmed. Those who have been questioning the given way of studying things or talking about them, the given language that hasn't been really created by us. And as Lorde has said, like if we are using the master's tools, then we are voluntarily or involuntarily or consciously or unconsciously maintaining the master's structures or kind of maintaining the existing structures instead of creating our own ones or questioning them. And in the current situation, it sometimes feels difficult to comprehend how short this history, our history, this time the our or the we referring to the non-male, written history is. The history that is not written by the male authors and scholars, especially the public history. And 1928, Virginia Woolf wrote A Room of One's Own, where she was talking about creative practice and how important it is for that to have a room of one's own, money, but also role models and examples, and how one needs education and traveling. For to be able to write, one needs to go and see things and know things and learn. And so, 1928, Virginia Woolf wrote about a novel, Life's Adventure, where Chloe liked Olivia. And it struck her then that it was the first time, probably in the whole history, that Chloe liked Olivia. Till this moment, Chloe, Olivia, Ophelia, Antigone, Julia, they have all been represented through their relation to male figure. They have been mothers, sisters, and lovers. So, finally, Chloe likes Olivia, now also in films. There has been new narratives, more variety in what Chloe and Olivia can be and who they can like. But still, it has only been like 100 years. It's a short time. A lot has happened during that period, but there is still a lot to do. And I think that especially times like this, the 100 years is a super, super short time. And we need to be really careful what will happen because these major crises are the biggest threat to minorities and those in most precarious positions. But I hope that this can also be an opportunity for new kinds of solidarity and care. So this is the framework for my dissertation, the why and how. The what is then going to be a bit more than 100 concepts. It's imitating the structure of the encyclopedia, but it's also disturbing it and disrupting it. It's reconsidering its form and its concept. It's also about curating, because I mostly work as a curator. And even I have been working as a curator already for a while, I don't always understand the work. When I need to explain my work to someone who is not familiar with the art world, it can be hard. It might be also that I always find it a bit difficult to say that I think for work, because it sounds really like noble and sublime, but instead thinking is really kind of banal, hard work that you do. It's also, I'm not educated curator. I haven't got a curator's education, but more like a combination of different things that have led me to the situation. So maybe if you are studying curating, maybe then you are taught what the profession is about and what happens. But how in different studies and researches and articles and books that have been written about curating, I think that there is often something that is missing. That the core of what actually happens in project doesn't really unravel in those texts. Like the theoretical text about it, about the profession, and about the curatorial, they always seem to leave something out. It might be the embodied aspect, or it might be the practical aspects. Because sometimes I feel that the curatorial is a bit like a game where you need to use certain concepts and you need to travel to certain places and name certain people so that you are again building the canon that is often created by the very traditional Western white male authors. So I really appreciate the curators, and now I'm talking about the independent curators, because the institutional work, I think, is quite different. The curators who also talk about the practical aspects and about the difficulties that there is, like, for example, Katja Krupenikova, who has been talking about the amount of work and the lack of money that comes with the profession. I think that it's very well needed example within the idea of a curator that in the early 2000s maybe was more about these like jet set star curators traveling around the world. So curating, it's often about struggling with funding and struggling with collaborations. But I'm interested in what really happens when we are creating a project together with artists. And what is it that I actually do there? The curatorial is built on the idea of a curator as an expert, a philosopher, a theorist. For me, curating, most of all, is caring and mediating. It is about sharing, but not so much about sharing my expertise, but sharing us listening, being open to things and trying to find the right forms for what is created in this process. It's a lot about trust. And this is one reason why I think that Aleksandra Kiskonen's thesis, Ystämö, that is about creating and friendship, is very much needed voice in this conversation. even if working with your friends or your partners, it's kind of a taboo in this field. But I find it weird because I think that when you closely work together with people in this project, it is kind of inevitable that you become friends with them, that there is friendships and that there is romances that will happen during these projects. And it would be mad then not to work with these people again just because you have become friends with them. And finding the people that make you feel comfortable is, I think, one of the main issues, considering my practice. And also considering the process-based practice. So people you are comfortable with, those are also the people that you call friends. And they are people that you then want to have by your side when you try to approach the unknown and the uncanny. Because ultimately, I have come to think that that is what, for me, curating, research, and art are about. They are about trying to make sense, not sense in the rational way, but more like sense in a way that something is meaningful in a world that is irrational. This is something we also discussed with what I sometimes find it even a bit sad when I teach. I love teaching and I love students, but sometimes I think that it's a bit depressing considering that the working as an artist or as a curator is not so easy. And then how to maintain the optimism that I think that the students should have still while they are studying can be difficult. But then Anna-Kaisa Rastenberg said that even if you tell about the realism in the art world, there is still always the meaningfulness, that working with art, you are doing something meaningful. And that was really kind of eye-opening for me during that time, to understand that that is what we do. Like we are also not only working with the meaningful things, but also creating meaningfulness. And that is one of the possibilities that art has. So there has been moments when I have lost the idea why, among all the concepts that I use, like care, accessibility, community, and solidarity, I still keep uncanny or unheimly as my main concept and research question. And maybe even if I wasn't very much against methods or the idea of using a method, I would maybe even say that the uncanny is my method. But now I have come to realize that uncanny is what drives me. It's what motivates me. And it's what forces to take these weird paths to unknown directions. And I think that that is what is needed for art to happen, for art to be there. And as the uncanniness is also a shared feeling. It's what quite many of the philosophers have been with different words talking about, like when we are thrown into the world that we can't really grasp or get a hold of, or that our whole being here is being towards death, and that is something that we can't understand. So all the time when we are living, we are facing something that escapes our understanding. So as this shared feeling of uncanniness, I would say that the uncanny is also what brings us together. What creates communities is the way that we're trying to survive the fear, the uncanny blob that is lurking behind the organized structures that we call society. And a curator, by creating spaces and places like exhibitions and events, creates possibilities to come together in front of the uncanniness. So as creating artworks or exhibitions or events, we create these spaces that are not just the everyday, but even if not by the themes or the forms juxtaposing it, but it's something different. And this something different is what opens then space to face the uncanny or the weird phenomena that we feel that something is there that shouldn't be there, or even the feeling of something not being there that should be there. And all this happens in this sphere or in this circle where the curator works with the artist, with the public, the spectators, and the space, because I think that the space itself is meaningful, but also with the local history, with the global history, and with the own experiences of all of these agencies. So I think that a curator is like a medium, or a bit like a fortune teller, one who is listening to the world and things that are still in the state of becoming and forming, and then trying to find the right forms and words for these things. And my research is part of this process. And as a contemporary world is often considered to be disenchanted, I think that the curator is like a midwife, helping in the delivery of art as something enchanted to come to the world. It is not about the curator's genius or ownership of the work or the authority, but it is about being open to the world and about listening and about being there for others. Being a curator is also about being able to carry heavy things, to survive with very little sleep, to tolerate insecurity, to be able to be patient with institutions and cities, but that's probably another story. And this openness and maybe also the enchantment is how I and why I see art, research, and curating as parallel works to activism and politics. It's all about radical care, about putting visions to action and suggesting alternative worlds. And how the alternative worlds are explored and suggested in my dissertation are the concepts. And these are not all the concepts. And there is also not only these are the titles then of the chapters, and they will also have subtitles. But this is a short version, and as we can't go through all of them now, we can hopefully continue this discussion somewhere in person later on. But I will read the list of the short list of the themes and topics and concepts. Art, object, alienation and anxiety, affect, distance, it's in the wrong place. Anthropocene, anthropology, archive, audience, public, spectator. Authorship and agency, becoming, being with, coexisting, living together, this subtitle and in the wrong place. Body, boundaries. Canon, care, caring, curiosity. Collectives, community, communication, continuity. Climate crisis, curating, a curator. Decenter, death. Decolonization, deconstruction. Difference and difference. Disturb, disrupt. Desire, dualism. Ethics, ecologies. Empathy, environment. Eerie, enchantment, disenchantment. Enlightenment, exhibition, everyday. Feminism, friendship, form, formlessness. Future, genealogy, gift. Globe, ghosts. Heterogeneous, heterotopia. History, home, hospitality. Identity, intervention. Kinship, knowledge, laboratory, language. Love, mediating, new, nostalgia, the other, otherness. Ownership, politics, the political. Precariousness, place, space, and site. Platform, public space. Public art, private. Power, practice. Present, the Pori School. Presents. Responsibility, resilient species. Soul, structures. Subject, sublime. Suburb, teaching, tools. Uncanny, the undead. We. And then the conclusion is called what if? Because I think that that is always the question that both starts the projects and encloses them. What if? What if I try something different? What if I do something else? The what if with this presentation was that what if I tried to do two things simultaneously? What if I tried to talk about my dissertation and repot my plants? Well, I have been able to do one of them, the other one somehow. I'm not sure if the plants enjoyed it. Might be that they are not going to survive it. But we hope for the best. I'm going to replant this one, and then I'm going to read you still a short chapter from the Audre Lorde book. This probably sounds horrible, I'm sorry about that. And thank you for spending Saturday with me. It's been weird times. Already, for a while, I started writing in my dissertation that I feel a bit like Jack Torrance locked in the Overlook Hotel. And I have to say that the lockdown doesn't really help that feeling. But hopefully it will not last for long. But maybe it's also about the writing the same line over and over and over again. I think that every time I think that I have come up with some new ideas or new thoughts, it's something that I have already been writing. But then again, I think that one doesn't have too many research questions or interests, and then you just always come back to the same ones. So, Audre Lorde in The Transformation of Silence. Each of us is here now because in one way or another we share a commitment to language and to the power of language and to the reclaiming of that language which has been made to work against us. In the transformation of silence into language and action, it is vitally necessary for each one of us to establish or examine her function in the transformation and recognize her role as vital within that transformation. For those of us who write, it is necessary to scrutinize not only the truth of what we speak, but the truth of that language by which we speak. For others, it is to share and spread also those words that are meaningful to us. But primarily for us all, it is necessary to teach by living and speaking those truths which we believe and know beyond understanding. Because in this way alone, we can survive by taking part in a process of life that is creative and continuing. That is growth. So thank you for being in the process with me. And I would hope that this would lead into conversation, and you can ask questions in the chat, but I also understand if you want to continue your Saturday nights with something else. But I'm hoping to continue this discussion with you somewhere I said, and enjoy your weekend. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with me, and see you soon. I'm going to water the plants, and it might take some minutes, and then I will say you goodbye. And the authors I have mentioned during the lecture have been Sara Ahmed, Audre Lorde, Virginia Woolf, Alexandra Kiskonen, Lucy Regaray, Julie Kristeva, Donna Haraway, there was probably someone else too. You will find them in my dissertation. Thank you. And goodbye.